Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a truly mind-bending collection of material you, our listener, sent in.
Yeah, this is quite something.
We're plunging into the mysteries and anomalies surrounding our nearest celestial neighbor, the Moon, as presented in a series of YouTube documentaries.
Right, titles like Alien Moon, Aliens on the Moon, The Truth Exposed, Ancient Aliens features.
Neil Armstrong contacts aliens on the Moon, NASA's unexplained files, and the Moon's mysteries revealed ancient aliens. They definitely paint a picture of lunar oddities that goes way beyond the standard textbooks.
Exactly, and the sheer variety of perspectives and claims within these sources is, well, it's remarkable. Our mission in this deep dive isn't really to say what's real and what isn't.
No, not at all.
Instead, we want to extract the most compelling and, let's say, intriguing arguments and supposed evidence regarding these unusual aspects of the Moon. We're just here to help you understand the core of what these documentaries are putting forward.
Okay, let's unpack this, maybe starting with a perspective that's about as far from modern science as you can get. Ancient legends.
Right, the Zulu people.
It turns out they have a creation story for the Moon that is, well, let's just say it's not your typical celestial formation narrative.
Indeed. These transcripts detail Zulu legends of two brother leaders, Warwane and Panku. They're said to have stolen the Moon from a fire dragon as an egg, no less.
An egg, okay.
And then they proceeded to hollow it out and roll it across the sky to Earth. Quite a celestial heist, you could say.
A dramatic origin, to say the least. And this event, according to the Zulu tradition, wasn't just a cosmic caper. It fundamentally altered Earth.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't just a new nightlight. It had serious consequences.
Like what?
Precisely. The legends claim that before the Moon arrived, Earth enjoyed a perpetually mild climate under a water vapor canopy. No seasons, the sun, just a hazy glow.
Wow, imagine that. Constantly humid and dimly lit.
It's a wildly different vision of early Earth, isn't it? Then the Moon appears, and everything changes.
What kind of changes are we talking about?
The Zulus say that the positioning of the Moon in Earth's orbit caused that water canopy to collapse in a massive cataclysmic rain.
Oh.
The transcripts actually draw a potential parallel here to the biblical flood narrative of Noah.
Interesting, Link.
Furthermore, they claim that women didn't even menstruate before the Moon's arrival, suggesting a profound biological link.
Really? It's quite a claim.
It is. So one key insight emerging right away is this ancient, deeply rooted idea that the Moon's presence isn't a given, and its arrival had dramatic, far-reaching effects on our planet.
So for the Zulu, the Moon isn't just a chunk of rock. It has a specific purpose, almost like a tool.
Their perspective goes even further. They view the Moon as having been deliberately constructed far away, intended as a means of observation and a vehicle for travel.
A vehicle?
They even call it a giant mothership used by reptilian beings to escape cataclysms they themselves had unleashed. This introduces the highly unconventional spacecraft moon theory right from the start.
The spacecraft moon theory. Okay, it sounds, outlandish, but the transcript suggests this idea is used to try and explain some of the Moon's more perplexing features.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If the Moon was built, what evidence could possibly support that?
What's fascinating here is how this theory attempts to provide explanations for several lunar mysteries that don't neatly fit the standard model of planetary formation.
That is.
For instance, the Moon's age. It's estimated to be older than the Earth, and potentially even older than parts of our solar system.
Older than the Earth?
Yeah. A manufactured object could, theoretically, predate its current orbital location,
Right. Okay, that makes a kind of sense within the theory. And then there's the Moon's internal structure.
We're told it has 3 distinct layers, with the densest material on the outside.
Which is backwards, right? Normally, heavy stuff sinks.
Exactly. That's the opposite of what we'd expect in a naturally formed body where gravity would pull the heaviest stuff to the center. So, if the Moon were a constructed object, an outer layer of dense material could logically serve as a hull or protective shell.
Okay.
The theory also tries to account for the surprisingly small amount of surface water, despite evidence suggesting water ice exists in permanently shadowed craters near the poles and maybe deeper within.
So a hollow structure wouldn't hold surface water well.
That's the idea. A hollowed-out structure wouldn't necessarily retain significant surface water.
And what about those large, dark plains on the Moon, the Maria, and those weird gravity spots, the mascons? What's the spacecraft Moon take on those?
The theory suggests that these features could be remnants of the immense machinery used to excavate the Moon's interior.
Like scars.
Perhaps. Maybe the Maria are scars from massive industrial processes. Even the rhythmic moonquakes, which have puzzled scientists because they're often shallow and last a long time.
Right, those are weird.
They're attributed to artificial constructs within the moon shifting or settling under Earth's gravitational influence.
And those occasional puffs of gas seen coming off the surface?
Yeah.
Could that tie into this idea of an artificial interior?
That's the implication. Perhaps these are releases of pressure or gases from within this alleged artificial structure. So right away, these sources present a radical alternative to the standard scientific understanding of the moon, using ancient myths as a springboard for a very modern, albeit, speculative theory.
It's quite a leap. But the strangeness doesn't end with its origin story.
Not by a long shot.
Because when we shift from these grand theories to specific observations, things people have claimed to see, that's when the plot really thickens. We're talking about lights in the dark and what some believe are actual structures on the lunar surface.
Indeed. These transcripts are filled with historical accounts of unusual lights spotted on the moon stretching back centuries. Observations attributed to figures like the ancient Greek astronomer Aristarchus.
Wow, that far back.
And it's not just ancient history. Even NASA, in the lead-up to the Apollo missions, documented over 570 instances of lights and flashes observed on the moon between 1540 and 1967.
570. Before they even went.
That's what these sources claim.
And they say these light sightings haven't stopped. They supposedly continue right up to 2014.
Apparently so.
Okay, well, lights could have natural explanations, maybe. It's the idea of actual built structures that really grabs your attention.
This raises a fundamental question. If the moon isn't just a geologically static sphere, what else might be up there? The transcripts refer to numerous photographs allegedly taken by both amateur astronomers and NASA,
Right.
which proponents claim show mechanical-type devices and other unnatural formations on the lunar surface.
And they even point to specific alleged examples, like something called the shard. What's the story behind that one?
The shard is described as a towering, obelisk-shaped object, supposedly about 1.5 miles tall.
1.5 miles.
Yeah. Said to have been photographed in the Euclid area by the Orbiter 3 mission in 1968. Dr. Bruce Cornett, who is mentioned in these sources as having studied the images, reportedly concluded that no known natural geological process could account for such a sharply defined vertical structure.
Wow. Imagine something that size just standing upright on the moon.
Quite something. And then there's another one they call the tower.
Oh, yeah. There.
The tower, located in the Sinus Medi region, is claimed to be even more gigantic, possibly exceeding 5 miles in height.
5 miles.
These sources suggest that these aren't isolated oddities, but maybe represent a pattern of unusual formations scattered across the moon, hinting at the possibility of a long-gone civilization or ongoing activity.
It makes you wonder what else might be hiding in plain sight. It's like they're looking at the moon as a potential archaeological site in the sky.
In a way, yes. What other unusual observations do these documentaries highlight?
Go on.
We hear about Dr. Frank Harris's alleged observation of a massive black body, some 250 by 50 miles in size, on the lunar surface.
A black body. Meaning what? Absorbing light.
The sources don't elaborate much, just this huge, dark area. There are also claims of transient clouds, flashes of lightning, moving shadows that defy explanation based on lunar geology.
Moving shadows. How?
Good question. And the recurring theme of spire-like structures reaching thousands of feet into the vacuum. One particularly strange claim is of a boulder found with tracks leading uphill from inside a crater all the way to its rim.
Wait, uphill tracks on the moon. How could a boulder roll uphill?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That definitely sounds like something that would require a very unusual explanation.
You think? And then there's the alleged case of the shrinking crater Luna.
Yes, these transcripts mention the crater Luna reportedly decreasing dramatically in diameter over time, from an initial 6 miles across to just 1.5 miles.
How does a crater shrink?
Again, no easy geological answer is offered. There are also claims of so-called hill effects, where features appear and disappear within short time frames, and even craters that seemingly vanish and reappear within hours.
Appearing and disappearing craters. Okay, this is getting stranger and stranger.
And the sheer number of reported light sightings is quite remarkable. Over 800 substantial observations of blinking and flashing lights documented in these sources.
Over 800.
And what all these seemingly disparate observations point to, according to these documentaries, are NASA photographs that allegedly reveal large pyramid-like structures tears or rips in the lunar surface with what appear to be artificial entrances.
Entrances?
Yes, like openings, massive girder-like objects, pieces of machinery, and even kilometer-sized blocks of metal.
Kilometer-sized metal blocks.
That's the claim. If even a fraction of these claims are accurate, it would fundamentally change our understanding of the moon.
Kilometer-sized metal blocks. Okay, that really pushes the boundaries of conventional lunar science and strongly suggests the possibility of artificial construction. Which, I guess, naturally leads us to another compelling theory discussed in these sources, the idea that the moon might actually be hollow.
Right, the hollow moon theory. It's presented in these documentaries as the most logical explanation for a collection of scientific anomalies.
A sign of anomaly.
One key piece of evidence cited is how sound waves seem to travel through the moon. Allegedly, the velocity of sound increases with depth and becomes surprisingly fast at a relatively shallow depth of around 40 miles too fast, it's argued, for solid rock.
Too fast. Suggesting what? Less density.
It suggests a significant change in density or even the presence of large voids, yeah.
That does imply something unusual about the moon's interior. And then there's the data gathered by the Apollo seismic network.
Right. Between 1972 and 1977, seismometers placed on the moon by Apollo missions recorded 28 moonquakes, some reaching magnitudes as high as 5.5 on the Richter scale.
Okay, so there are moonquakes.
But what's particularly intriguing to proponents of the hollow moon theory is that these were often shallow quakes that lasted for an exceptionally long time, some over 10 minutes.
10 minutes for a moonquake. That does sound very strange. Not like earthquakes here.
Very different from typical earthquakes, which tend to be shorter and deeper.
And of course, there's the often quoted remark attributed to Neil Armstrong.
Ah, yes, the ringing like a bell comment. After the Apollo 12 mission deliberately crashed the lunar module's ascent stage onto the moon, Armstrong is famously quoted as saying, "The moon rang like a bell for an extended period."
Which would make sense if it were hollow, right?
That's the interpretation. This observation, combined with the seismic data, led some scientists, including Soviet researchers Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, to propose in the 1970s that the moon might be an artificial, hollowed-out planetoid.
Okay, so Soviet scientists were proposing this too.
According to these sources, yes. Their theory takes the spaceship moon idea to an even more extreme level, suggesting it was not only built but also deliberately piloted into Earth's orbit from some distant corner of the galaxy.
Wow. Piloted into orbit.
And this, they argued, could potentially explain the discrepancies in the age of different moon rocks and lunar dust samples.
The age thing again.
Right. As well as the hypothetical possibility of life having existed within this artificial structure for eons.
Life inside the moon.
Potentially, in this view. Interestingly, these transcripts mention that this spaceship moon concept has even found some level of support, or at least intrigued scientists, at places like NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and among physicists at Oxford University.
Really? JPL in Oxford.
Leading to a reconsideration of the capture theory of the moon's origin, but with the added element of intelligent steering. So the idea that the moon might not be a naturally formed, solid body has a surprising number of facets within these sources.
It definitely seems to have layers, whether geological or theoretical. Now let's move into even more controversial territory. The allegations of deliberate cover-ups and the supposed encounters experienced by astronauts.
Okay, this is where the narrative takes a sharp turn into the realm of conspiracy and, well, hidden truths.
What kind of evidence do these sources present for these alleged cover-ups?
The transcripts include various anecdotal accounts that suggest NASA and other government agencies have actively suppressed information about unusual findings on the moon.
Like what, for example?
One frequently cited story involves television viewers supposedly witnessing an Apollo astronaut picking up an object resembling a glass bottle.
A glass bottle.
On the moon.
Followed by a sudden and unexplained blackout of the television feed. It's the kind of story that fuels speculation about what else might have been hidden from public view, you know?
Yeah, a sudden blackout like that would definitely raise eyebrows. What other first-hand accounts or unusual occurrences are highlighted?
There are numerous reports of Apollo astronauts encountering difficulties when trying to drill into the lunar surface, suggesting a surprisingly hard or even metallic subsurface.
Hitting metal.
Or something very hard. Furthermore, some sources claim that astronauts discovered metal shavings in their samples and that lunar rocks contained unusual elements not typically found in natural lunar material.
Such as?
Things like brass, mica, titanium, uranium-236, and neptunium-237. Neptunium, isn't that man-made?
Typically, yes. Its presence, or U-236, would certainly be unexpected in natural lunar rock.
Okay, that would be strange. And the claims of concealed evidence extend beyond just what the astronauts physically brought back.
Yes, these documentaries refer to Sergeant Willard Winnell, who allegedly possessed a photograph of a saucer-shaped object over the moon, a photo he claimed was obtained through government channels.
A government photo of a UFO over the moon.
It's also asserted that Soviet and American spacecraft captured images of structures on the moon that were subsequently censored, with some of these images later being obtained by researchers like Fred Steckling.
So, leaked or recovered censored photos.
That's the claim. Adding to this, French astronomers are said to have reported observing dome-like structures inside lunar craters based on photographs from the Ranger 2 probe.
Domes on the moon seem to be a recurring theme in these alternative narratives, don't they?
Indeed. The Lunar Orbiter 2 mission reportedly took photographs showing what appeared to be large, dome-like structures on the moon's surface. These photos were supposedly released by NASA without any official explanation or commentary, leaving room for interpretation.
Just release them, no comment.
Apparently. Initially, it's claimed that NASA even admitted that Apollo astronauts had witnessed unidentified flying objects during their missions, but later retracted these statements, further fueling suspicion.
Admitted, then retracted. That sounds suspicious in itself.
Isn't it?
And what about the communications during the Apollo missions themselves? Were there any unusual exchanges that might suggest unexpected encounters?
Well, civilian radio operators who were able to listen in on the unencrypted communications between the Apollo spacecraft and mission control.
Right, the ham radio guys.
They reportedly heard astronauts making remarks about flashes of light, buildings, roads, tracks, and huge blocks on the lunar surface.
Buildings, roads, on the moon.
While NASA officials later dismissed these comments as metaphors for geological features, the geologist who supposedly trained the astronauts in lunar geology is claimed to have been baffled by these descriptions, suggesting they didn't align with known lunar formations.
So the geology expert didn't think they sounded like metaphors?
According to this account, no. This discrepancy adds to the sense that something unusual might have been observed.
The transcripts also bring up the Clementine mission, launched in the 1990s. What's its alleged significance in all of this?
According to individuals like John Brandenburg, mentioned in these sources, the Clementine mission, with its extensive photographic survey of the moon, was potentially a reconnaissance mission.
Reconnaissance? For what?
Aimed at identifying and assessing potential alien bases or activity. Brandenburg himself is quoted as expressing concern about unmistakably artificial structures observed in the Clementine imagery.
Wow. Unmistakably artificial.
He even makes the startling claim of having witnessed a firefight in space through classified channels alongside retired military officials.
A firefight. In space. Between who?
The sources don't specify, but it suggests a hidden conflict or confrontation related to lunar activities.
That's a truly extraordinary claim. And then there are even more extreme allegations, such as those attributed to former CIA pilot John Lear.
Lear puts forward the highly controversial claim that there are approximately 250 million humanoid aliens residing on the moon.
250 million.
Along with gray aliens living in extensive underground urban areas where he alleges they are conducting genetic experiments.
Okay, that's really out there.
He also asserts that NASA has routinely edited Apollo mission photographs, specifically citing SB-246 as a reference to remove evidence of these alien civilizations.
Editing photos. Airbrushing?
But he claims that traces of cities, bases, pipes, vegetation, and even a breathable atmosphere are still subtly visible in the altered images if you know what to look for.
So he's essentially saying the cover-up isn't entirely successful and hints of alien life are still present in the official record.
That seems to be his argument.
And what about the history of UFO sightings being linked back to the moon?
These transcripts mention that during the 1950s, there were numerous reports of unidentified flying objects observed over Earth that were reportedly tracked back to the moon by government radar facilities.
Tracked back to the moon.
This same period also saw Sergeant Willard Winnell's account of a civilian astronomer allegedly photographing a saucer-shaped object positioned over the moon, suggesting a sustained and perhaps even escalating level of unexplained activity in Earth's lunar vicinity.
It paints a picture of ongoing interest in, and perhaps interaction with, the moon that stretches back decades and goes far beyond standard scientific exploration.
Definitely.
So these sources go on to detail even more alleged artificial structures and anomalies on the moon, often referencing specific locations and even individual Apollo missions. It's almost like an alternative guide to lunar landmarks.
What becomes apparent is the sheer volume and specificity of these claims. For instance, a massive bridge-like structure said to be around 12 miles length,
12 miles long.
allegedly spanning the Sea of Crisis, was reportedly observed as far back as 1954 by an astronomer named John O'Neill.
1954, before spaceflight even properly started.
And in the 1950s, astronomer Morris K. Jessup also claimed the existence of UFO bases located on the moon. The stark contrast between the near and far sides of the moon is also brought up.
So.
The notable absence of the large, dark Maria plains on the far side, the differing densities of impact craters, and the variations in crustal thickness. These are highlighted as potential indicators of an artificial or manipulated celestial body.
Because why would one side be so drastically different from the other in a naturally formed object?
That's the question posed.
And what about the reported difficulties the Apollo astronauts experienced when trying to drill into certain areas of the lunar surface? You mentioned that earlier.
Yes, the transcripts recount instances where astronauts apparently encountered significant resistance when drilling in the darker, smoother plain regions of the moon.
So not just hard rock.
The implication is perhaps something more. Analysis of the lunar soil samples brought back to Earth reportedly revealed the presence of rare metals that required exceptionally high temperatures to fuse.
High temperatures?
Yeah.
Like processed metals.
Further fueling speculation about unusual geological compositions. Soviet lunar probes, like Zonda 20, allegedly discovered pure iron particles that showed no signs of oxidation.
No rust. Pure iron.
Drawing a comparison to the ancient, non-rusting iron pillar in Delhi here on Earth.
Huh. That's a strange parallel. Even the lunar dust itself is presented as having unusual and potentially hazardous properties in these sources.
Right. Lunar dust is described as being incredibly fine, almost like talcum powder, yet surprisingly abrasive.
Abrasive.
Clinging stubbornly to everything due to the moon's low gravity. NASA reportedly encountered numerous operational challenges with it, including the erosion of spacesuits and the potential for damage to vital equipment.
So it was a real problem for the astronauts.
It seems so. It's also frequently described as having a distinct smell, often likened to gunpowder.
Gunpowder? That's weird for rock dust.
Certainly unexpected for inert rock dust, yeah.
And there's the claim of a widespread glassy glaze found across the lunar surface. What's the explanation offered for that?
This glassy layer is attributed to an unidentified intense heat source, one that wasn't caused by typical meteoroid impacts.
Not impacts. So what then?
The theory put forward is that it might be the result of extremely high-speed travel or perhaps some form of ancient technology leaving residue.
High-speed travel across the surface.
Or maybe something else entirely. Furthermore, Apollo 15 readings allegedly indicated a surprisingly radioactive upper crust in certain areas.
Radioactive.
With unexplained hotspots near the Apennine Mountains despite the moon's supposedly cold core again, a finding that some proponents suggest supports the hollow moon theory.
Hot spots but a cold core. Then we get back into the Apollo missions, with even more specific alleged encounters and attempts at secrecy.
Rumors persist, though totally unconfirmed, that Neil Armstrong witnessed unidentified flying objects on the rim of a crater during the Apollo 11 landing.
UFOs watching the landing.
And that Buzz Aldrin saw an ethereal being shortly after setting foot on the moon.
An ethereal being. Wow. Unconfirmed, you say?
Highly unconfirmed, yes. But the alleged 2-minute gap in live television transmissions during Apollo 11.
Right, the missing 2 minutes.
And the subsequent reports from both civilian and Soviet radio operators about Armstrong's supposed AMA spaceship report, a report that was never officially acknowledged, continued to fuel speculation about what really happened during those crucial moments.
So, people heard him report spaceships, but NASA denies it.
That's the gist of the claim, yes.
And the bizarre tale of a mysterious alien language being broadcast on French television. That sounds almost unbelievable.
The transcripts describe a purported censored broadcast that allegedly occurred on French TV, attributed to a U.S. astronaut referred to as Warden.
Warden, who's that? Al Warden from Apollo 15.
Possibly, the source isn't explicit. This broadcast supposedly contained a sequence of sounds or language that linguists were completely unable to translate or identify.
Untranslatable alien language on TV.
Adding another layer of intrigue to the narrative of potential extraterrestrial contact. And then, of course, there are countless alleged photographic and video images that supposedly depict various structures on the moon.
What kinds of structures?
Some appearing to move, others emitting light, leaving tracks across the surface, exhibiting impossibly large dimensions, or displaying distinct pyramid-like shapes, all raising fundamental questions about their origin and current state.
The far side of the moon, the side we never see from Earth, seems to be a particular focus for many of these extraordinary claims.
Indeed. Military personnel with the codename Wolf mentioned in these sources claimed to have viewed classified photographs of the far side of the moon dating back to 1965.
Classified photos from 65.
Reportedly showing various types of structures, including mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical objects, tall towers, and what appeared to be radar antenna arrays.
Radar dishes on the far side.
Observations from Apollo 8 photographs made by individuals like Stern allegedly revealed complex geometric formations that seemed undeniably unnatural.
And the idea of actual movement being observed on the lunar surface, you mentioned tracks earlier.
Yes, these documentaries mention instances of objects apparently carving long, deep tracks into the lunar terrain, with some reports suggesting these objects were moving inexplicably, seemingly independent of any known lunar forces.
Objects moving on their own.
The book, Somebody Else's on the Moon, is cited as a key source for such claims. Vito Sicari is also mentioned as having purportedly gained access to high-resolution NASA photographs that seem to show various forms of infrastructure on the moon.
Infrastructure? Like what?
Including structures, pipelines, bridge-like spans, heavy machinery, and even what looked like tank tracks.
Tank tracks on the moon.
That's the claim. Even specific locations like Mare Crisium come up in these accounts.
What about Mare Crisium?
An Apollo 16 photograph allegedly shows a formation within Mare Crisium that has been described as a fortress, featuring a distinct cylindrical structure and what appears to be a gun turret.
A fortress with a gun turret.
Additionally, satellite dish-like formations, such as those allegedly observed in the Asada crater region, are described with specific, artificial-looking features. Edgar Mitchell, one of the Apollo 14 astronauts.
All right, sixth man on the moon.
He's cited as holding a personal belief in an alien presence on the moon and the existence of structures on its far side.
So an actual Apollo astronaut believed this stuff.
Mitchell was certainly very open about his belief in extraterrestrial life and phenomena, yes.
The book, ULOs, Unidentified Lunar Objects Revealed in NASA Photography, seems to be a central piece of evidence for many of these claims.
It is. Its purported findings of numerous unnatural structures visible in official NASA imagery are frequently referenced.
And you mentioned an archaeologist's reaction.
Yes. One particularly striking anecdote involved an archaeologist who, upon being shown lunar photographs without being told their origin, reportedly remarked that the formations looked man-made.
Because they didn't look natural.
Highlighting how some of these features apparently defy conventional geological explanations. The intriguing possibilities even raised that the Apollo 8 mission, the first to orbit the moon, may have had a secondary objective.
Which was?
To spy on a potentially alien-occupied far side, perhaps as a strategic military contingency for the United States.
Spying on aliens with Apollo 8? That's quite a thought. And it seems the Soviets also captured some intriguing imagery of the moon before the Apollo landings.
Soviet Zond 3 photographs, taken prior to Apollo 11, allegedly revealed a remarkably clear image of a towering structure on the far side, estimated to be around 22 miles high.
22 miles high.
As well as a shattered dome-like formation, perhaps 5 to 10 miles in diameter with visible holes.
Wow. And Apollo 8 filmed a tower, too.
The Apollo 8 mission itself is also said to have filmed an inexplicable tower during its orbit.
And even more alleged artificial structures visible in Apollo imagery.
Yes, an Apollo 8 photograph is cited as showing what appear to be enormous, clearly artificial-looking structures on the lunar surface. Another image is interpreted by some as depicting a bridge or pipe-like structure, though others suggest this could be a natural formation like ejecta from an impact crater.
So could be natural, could be artificial.
Depends who you ask based on these sources.
Then we circle back to the Apollo 11 mission and Buzz Aldrin's well-known admission about encountering a UFO that tracked their spacecraft.
That's correct. Aldrin has publicly acknowledged this event. Rumors also persist that upon their return to Earth, Neil Armstrong reported to the chief medical officer about observing aliens and their vehicles watching the Apollo 11 landing.
So Armstrong reported seeing them watching.
That's the rumor. Unsubstantiated claims also circulate about warnings allegedly given to humanity by these extraterrestrial beings to stay away from the moon.
A warning, stay off the moon.
Allegedly. Armstrong's generally reserved and somewhat somber demeanor in the years following his lunar experience has also been interpreted by some as indicative of a profound and perhaps disturbing encounter.
The strong silent type.
Yeah.
Maybe saw something he couldn't talk about.
That's the speculation.
And the alleged secret expedition into a lunar cave.
There are accounts of Armstrong and a figure named Hall supposedly venturing into a lunar cave that exhibited unusually straight walls, right angles,
Right angles underground.
and even what was described as a 1500 BC burial chamber, suggesting a subterranean structure of artificial origin.
1500 BC. On the moon. That doesn't make sense timeline-wise, does it?
Not conventionally, no. The unexpected computer alarm, error code 1202, during the Apollo 11 landing is also brought up.
Right, the computer overload.
With the theory that Buzz Aldrin may have activated the lunar module's side radar, specifically to try and detect any artificial structures on the surface.
Trying to use radar to see structures during landing? Interesting idea.
The Brookings Institute report, a document from the early days of space exploration, gets another mention in the context of potential lunar discoveries.
What about this time?
Its warning about the potentially disruptive societal impact of discovering extraterrestrial life is often cited as a possible motivation behind a long-term strategy of concealing such findings from the public.
The people can't handle the truth argument.
Essentially, the Apollo 17 mission, the last manned landing on the moon, is even speculated by some to have been a covert mission aimed at salvaging or studying alien technology.
Apollo 17 is a tech salvage mission.
That's one fringe theory presented.
And the very ground where Apollo 17 landed is called into question.
The hexagonal shapes of some of the mountains at the Apollo 17 landing site are noted as resembling artificial structures rather than natural geological formations.
Hexagonal mountains.
It's also claimed that NASA's camera control during that mission deliberately avoided showing what the astronauts were doing near a V-shaped depression in the terrain, hinting at a possible area of interest that was intentionally kept out of public view.
Camera pointing away deliberately.
The discovery of unusual orange soil at Shorty Crater during Apollo 17.
I remember hearing about the orange soil. Volcanic glass, wasn't it?
That's the official explanation. But these sources also mention the finding of small objects within it that resembled mechanisms, including one that some have interpreted as a humanoid-appearing robot head with a distinct red stripe.
A robot head in the orange soil.
Okay.
Adding to the list of anomalies.
The mysterious 2-minute gap in Apollo 11's live transmissions comes up yet again in these sources.
Along with persistent allegations of intercepted communications between the Apollo 11 astronauts and mission control during that blackout, where the astronauts supposedly reported seeing alien objects and saucer-shaped craft.
The same claims heard by the radio operators. Yes. The often noted somber and perhaps even shaken demeanor of the Apollo astronauts upon their return to Earth is also highlighted as potentially reflecting a disturbing or overwhelming encounter on the moon.
They didn't seem like typical heroes celebrating.
Some observers felt their demeanor was unusually subdued, yes. This leads to the enduring mystery of why, despite the success of the Apollo program, humans haven't returned to the moon since Apollo 17.
Good question. Why haven't we gone back?
And why the Soviet Union, with its own ambitious space program, never sent manned missions to the lunar surface. Was it just budgets and politics or something else?
Or that alleged warning. And it seems even later, Apollo missions yielded more photographic oddities.
Allegedly, footage from Apollo 14 showed glowing, dome-like structures on the lunar surface that mysteriously disappeared from subsequent versions of the film.
Domes that vanished from the film.
Yeah.
Edited out.
Leading to accusations of image manipulation, the broader allegation that NASA routinely airbrushes or otherwise alters lunar photographs to remove evidence of alien presence or artificial structures is a recurring theme throughout these sources.
The airbrushing claims again.
Buzz Aldrin's reported refusal to even look at photographs purported to show alien structures on the moon, suggesting that others within NASA should examine them instead, also adds to the intrigue.
Aldrin wouldn't look at them. Why not?
The implication in these sources is perhaps he already knew or didn't want to be drawn into commenting.
That Apollo 11 photograph of a gigantic flying saucer on the lunar surface keeps being mentioned as particularly compelling.
Described as having an artificial appearance with evenly spaced, machine-like ridges, Buzz Aldrin has reportedly declined to comment on this specific image when questioned about it.
No comment from Buzz. Interesting.
A perplexing Lunar Orbiter 3 photograph of Kepler crater is also highlighted, with some researchers suggesting it looks less like a natural impact crater and more like a strip mine.
A strip mine on the moon.
With a cleanly sheared rim and piles of rubble nearby. That's the interpretation offered.
And the strange smokestack anomaly reportedly filmed by the Apollo 8 crew.
An unexplained object resembling a smokestack apparently releasing a jet-like cloud or vapor into the vacuum of space was indeed filmed by Apollo 8.
A smokestack? Venting.
This has led some researchers to speculate about a possible connection between this smokestack and the unusual appearance of Kepler crater, perhaps suggesting ongoing activity.
Like the strip mine and the smokestack are related.
Possibly. The abundance of helium-3 on the moon, a potential fuel source for future fusion reactors, is also brought into the discussion.
Right, helium-3. Valuable stuff.
With the suggestion that alien mining operations might be underway, potentially explaining some of the observed tracks and pipeline-like features.
Mining helium-3 could explain tracks and machinery. Makes a kind of narrative sense.
If you accept the premise of alien mining, yes.
Pipelines on the moon. That's a very specific and industrial-sounding claim.
A JPL Jet Propulsion Laboratory photograph is cited as allegedly showing a pipe-like structure running through a crater, complete with a funnel-shaped extension pointing out into space.
A pipe pointing into space.
And an inexplicable tower with a wire assembly, located in the heavily photographed Sinus Media region, is also mentioned as defying easy natural explanation.
It's interesting how Buzz Aldrin himself has directed attention towards the Martian moon Phobos and its mysterious monolith.
Yes, Aldrin has publicly stated his belief that the monolith on Phobos is potentially of artificial origin and could serve as a strategic stepping stone for future missions to Mars. Kind of a deflection, maybe? Or just genuine interest?
Maybe saying, look over there, not here.
Or perhaps. Dr. Brandenburg is also credited with discovering what he describes as a miles-wide rectilinear structure in an Apollo 15 photograph, which he believes resembles a sprawling complex or prison.
A prison on the moon.
Further fueling speculation about large-scale artificiality.
All these claims seem to have even reached the attention of the defense community.
These sources suggest that concerns have been raised within the defense community regarding potential alien activity on the moon, drawing parallels to the tense atmosphere of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Comparing it to the Cuban Missile Crisis, that implies serious strategic concern.
Implying a possible strategic or security dimension to these alleged lunar anomalies. Mark D'Antonio's analysis of various compelling lunar photos and videos is also highlighted.
What did he find?
His interpretations point towards wagon wheel-like structures and a massive bridge and pipe formation.
Wagon wheels. Bridges.
And even what appears to be some kind of extraterrestrial vehicle has allegedly been photographed. An Apollo 17 image is cited as potentially showing an interplanetary vehicle or space capsule complete with what look like portholes.
Spaceship parked on the moon.
D'Antonio also focuses on an Apollo 11 photograph that appears to depict a giant saucer or mothership exhibiting evenly spaced compartments, suggesting a large manufactured object.
The giant saucer again.
The Brookings Institute report keeps coming back as a key piece in the alleged cover-up narrative.
Because of the societal impact warning.
Exactly. Its warning about the potential societal upheaval resulting from confirmed extraterrestrial contact is reiterated as a likely motivation behind a sustained government effort to keep hidden what is supposedly known about the moon, driven by a fear of public reaction and potential instability.
Plus the military angle.
Right. The strategic importance of the moon in terms of space-based defense is also noted as a possible factor in maintaining secrecy.
Then we have the almost legendary Apollo 20 secret mission allegations. This sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
These highly speculative claims involve a supposed Apollo 20 mission with an astronaut named William Rutledge.
Never heard of him or Apollo 20.
It's claimed to be a secret mission. It allegedly discovered a large, abandoned alien spacecraft on the far side of the moon, a fuselage purportedly visible in an older Apollo 15 photograph, and even the preserved body of a mummified alien woman inside.
An alien mummy from a secret mission. Okay, that's peak conspiracy theory right there.
It's definitely pushing the envelope even for these sources.
Finally, these sources touch on the intriguing similarities between alleged lunar structures and ancient structures found here on Earth.
Right. The parallels drawn between the shapes and possible functions of certain claimed lunar formations and ancient Earth structures, like pyramids and ziggurats.
Like the ones in Egypt or Mesopotamia.
Exactly. They're used to suggest the possibility of either ancient alien influence on human civilization or perhaps a common extraterrestrial architectural style.
Ancient astronaut theory connection.
Precisely. Mike Barra's alleged discovery of a dataless ziggurat on the far side of the moon and the claim that NASA subsequently altered the image to conceal it are mentioned.
A ziggurat on the moon.
There are also accounts suggesting that Apollo 17 astronauts may have entered a structure on the moon containing alien artifacts, including machine-like objects and a human-like skull.
They went inside a structure and found a skull.
Again, these are claims from the sources. The ancient astronaut theory, which posits extraterrestrial involvement in human history, is presented as a potential framework for understanding these alleged lunar discoveries.
Well, that has certainly been an extensive deep dive into a truly staggering array of claims and observations concerning the moon. Phew!
It's a lot.
The sheer volume and imaginative scope of what these sources present is really quite something to take in.
Indeed. And as we stated at the beginning, our aim has been to navigate these intriguing aspects and understand the arguments being made without offering definitive judgments on their factual basis.
Absolutely. We're just presenting what's in the material you sent us. But the recurring themes that have emerged are undeniably compelling, aren't they?
They are persistent.
The persistent idea of artificial structures scattered across the lunar landscape, a multitude of unexplained phenomena ranging from lights to moving objects, the decades-long allegations of systematic cover-ups, and the enduring, if controversial, possibility of an extraterrestrial presence, past or present, influencing our closest celestial neighbor.
This leads to a crucial question for you, our listener. Considering the wide spectrum of alleged evidence and extraordinary claims we've explored in these sources, what do you make of the enduring mysteries surrounding our moon?
Yeah, what conclusions, if any, do you draw? What specific questions does this information ignite for you about our place within the vast cosmos and maybe the accepted narrative of history as we understand it?
It certainly gives you a lot to think about.
We encourage you to continue your own exploration of these fascinating topics, to delve further into the available information, and as always, to critically evaluate everything you encounter. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.